Welcome to Innovation Illuminated, a podcast where guest entrepreneurs and experts in the field of business share their experiences and knowledge learned through their journey in the business world. I am your host, Hunter Perock, and similar to these guests, I am also an entrepreneur. I am starting this podcast to grow my knowledge along with spreading the knowledge of these entrepreneurs to you, the listener, at zero cost. I want to gear this podcast towards delving deep into their employment throughout their life, along with all their experiences and knowledge that they've learned through their journey as a business owner or a professional in their business world. I want to take a few minutes to talk about myself so you can get to learn about me, the host. I went to high school, and following high school, started my first company, Surf Lake Country. Surf Lake Country is a wake surf charter business based on Pewaukee Lake, Wisconsin. So basically what a wake surf charter company is that we pick up people at a set location, which is a restaurant, and we take them out for a couple hours. We could do a 2-hour lesson, 3-hour lesson, half-day lesson, and we provide the boat. We have a deckhand, a captain, and all the equipment. So it's basically an all-in-one experience where you get to learn how to wake surf and spend time on a luxury mastercraft boat. The second business I started was Surf Lake Country. Growing up, I always mowed lawns around the neighborhood, and we already had all the equipment, so my dad was thinking, why wouldn't you start a business and get more clients since we already had the equipment? So I branched out and picked up a few more clients and eventually grew it into, now I'm still doing it and have around 20 weekly cuts that I do for Surf Lake Country. I also marketed Surf Lake Country with a campaign called Cutting for a Cause. I have a deep attachment to Parkinson's disease since my dad works in the Parkinson's field and my grandpa also passed away with Parkinson's disease. Cutting for a Cause is a campaign where I donate a portion of our profits to the WPA, the Wisconsin Parkinson's Association. I also do other community work like a customer-driven or client-driven food drive every year in partner with Dairyland Property Management. The third business, which arguably could be the most interesting and the thing that I learned the most business-wise from, was the Easy Fade Clipper Guard. During COVID, I needed a haircut since my hair gets really curly and grows into an afro if it gets too long. So I asked my family members if they could do a fade haircut. So we bought clippers and the guards, and they tried to do it, and it never turned out good. I mean, my hair was looking terrible all throughout COVID, and as you know, barbershops were closed all through COVID because of protocols and whatnot. So they couldn't do a fade. The point that I'm getting at is I needed to find something that they could easily make them do a fade haircut. I scoured the internet, couldn't find anything, so I decided, why don't I just make one? Okay, let me go back to high school, actually. I was very into wood shop and tech ed, which basically is like learning how to run 3D printers, injection mold, and then wood shop was learning to work with your hands and build things out of wood. So I was very interested in that. My grandpa was actually a woodworker and built this chair that I'm sitting on talking to you right now, and so much stuff. He actually built their house that they lived in, and my dad is the same way. I swear they could fix anything with their hands. Anything that you give them that's broken or needs fixing, they could build it. And I love that also throughout high school, taking something start to finish, you get to design it and just running with it. You get to pick what it looks like start to finish, and it's your own personal touch that goes into it. And you know it's going to turn out to be a good product because it's you doing it. Anyways, getting on to Easy Fade. I knew that I could start or make this product because I already had experience working with the CAD software, which is pretty much a design software that you can design 3D models and whatnot. So I installed Autodesk Fusion 360, which is a CAD software, on my computer. Bought a 3D printer off Amazon. I think it was like maybe $350. And then I started making prototypes. So I made the design in Autodesk Fusion 360, which I'll tell you, it took me a long time. And I stayed up a lot of nights because I wanted to make it perfect to be able to do a fade haircut. So what I came up with having is one guard that could slide back and forth in a channel. So on the side of the guard, there was a ring for your finger. And as you work your way up the head, you'd slide your finger up to extend the guard longer and longer to create that fade effect. Whereas with a normal clipper and guard combo, you'd have to keep switching out the guard, going from a 1 guard to a 2 guard to a 3 guard. And let me tell you, those barbers that do that are very talented because it is a tedious process and takes lots of practice in order to master that fade effect. And it looks great. So I wanted to try to emulate that with a guard that I invented. So like I said, I designed it, 3D printed it, probably went through 50 prototypes, and each one of those prototypes took about 3 hours to 3D print maybe. Experimented with different plastics, what was turning out the best, what had the best results. And eventually I filed a patent for it and drafted up all that work, worked with a lawyer, got a provisional patent, and then I ran a Kickstarter campaign. The Kickstarter campaign turned out successful, raising and selling $5,000 worth of the Easy Fade clipper guard that I invented. And I wasn't happy with how the 3D printed ones were turning out. So I needed to resort to getting them injection molded because I knew that that's what real clipper guards were made out of, was injection molded material. I rummaged around to injection molding factories and stumbled upon one close by in my neighborhood here. And they were too big of an operation for me. Moral of the story is that their production costs would be so low, but also the tooling costs would be so high, and you'd have to run so many parts through. So I'll give you an example. Say the tooling cost was $20,000, and it's going to cost you 20 cents per unit to make them. And there's a 5,000 unit minimum per month, we'll say. And there would be a setup charge to set up the tooling to run the injection mold every single time that you wanted more made. So I didn't want to dive in that deep and get my feet wet with that many units right off the bat because I only had, say, 100 from the Kickstarter that I had to ship out. So I'm not going to go 5,000. I could have dove that deep, but I chose not to. And I went with a business called Proto Labs out of Minnesota, I believe. And what they specialize in is a higher cost per unit, but lower unit volumes. So they work more so with prototypes and whatnot. But I already had the design, and I took it to them, and I believe it was $7 per unit to make, and also was like a tooling cost of, I want to say $14,000 for the tool. So the tool is the metal that they mill, and then they push the metal together, shoot the molten plastic into it, and then pull it apart, and that's where you get the injection molded part out of. And I also didn't know so many barriers or hurdles that I had to jump to make the product injection moldable, if moldable is a word. So I worked with Proto Labs, and they came back to me multiple times with stuff that I had to fix because there's things called undercuts, which are, say, where the mold matches up. The mold has to pull back apart then. Otherwise, it's going to break your plastic. So I had to make a lot of changes to make those undercuts possible, especially with the channel, because the guard slides back and forth. So there was a U-shaped channel that the guard slides in, and that was considered an undercut. So we put the injection pins in a correct spot to shoot the mold in, and had to make multiple changes to make it injection moldable. Back to that word that I don't know if is a real word, but we'll say it is because it sounds funny. So the product was injection moldable, and I didn't like the first run. They did a sample run, and I didn't like the plastic that we ended up going with. It was too soft and was breaking. And I also got a suggestion to put notches on the side of the guard so you could adjust it to a set length. And so what I mean by set length is that you could have it go from like a 1 to a 2 to a 3 and set it at that length. So you could go back and forth, 1, move the clip, back and forth, 2, move the clip, back and forth, 3. Instead of having to do that sliding back and forth movement. Because people were saying online, some of the feedback I got was that it wasn't going to be very reliable and consistent with the movements. So I put those notches on the side of the guard and then experimented with another type of plastic, which worked out great. This plastic was a lot harder and worked out great with those notches because the notches weren't falling off. Like on that first plastic, it was too soft, so they were kind of nudging away and kind of falling apart. So I ordered I ordered 500 pieces to start. Have a Shopify store, still run it, and expanded into selling the capes, the clippers and the guards, and then there's also bundles that you could do, like a clipper guard cape combo, like a starter pack. So that's Easy Fade Co. and Surf Lake Country, the wake surf lessons, Turf Lake Country, the lawn mowing company, and now Innovation Illuminated. So I'm going on the 4th business, and I'm super excited to start this one and talk with these entrepreneurs, because I feel like I have so many entrepreneurs that I surround myself with that I never get to talk about business experiences with. I'm always just hanging out with them and don't really get to talk about the things that I really want to talk about, such as what motivates them, their employment as a kid, and overall what made them successful, what they think I should strive for, or you, the listener, young entrepreneurs and people that want to get into the business world and grow, what we should get into and how we should grow ourselves and what's worked for these successful people. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And I also want to say, please leave a comment if you'd like me to interview somebody in a specific industry, and also what you're curious about learning from them, such as a question. Please leave a comment about that, and please subscribe to this channel and share with people that you think would also find it interesting and would like to learn and grow in the business world. Thanks for tuning in to Innovation Illuminated. I'm Hunter Perock, and I hope you enjoy this podcast.